Hi, everyone. This is your host, Gerardo Alonso from your HR Power Up podcast. With me, someone that I consider a very close friend, someone I know from a little while. I worked with her before. I'm not going to do a big introduction. Amber Reyes, the VP from HR and operations and experience for this company called Unity. Uh, she has experience working and leading TA and HR in other companies like Flex, Dell, and uh, Xerox. That's the one.
Mhm.
Also, hi, nice to see you
Hi.
again. It's been
Hello,
a while.
Gerardo. How are you? It's good to see you. It's been
I'm
too
good.
long.
Too long. We've been talking offline about it, and we were kind of catching up. Um, so I wanna invite you to this conversation. This is somebody there's a lot of people who will be seeing this podcast, and so I want to put you not in the spot, but yes, let us know a little bit about your experience, how you got to the point to be have a strong career and get to the job that probably everyone in HR wants, right? To be a vice president of a global company.
Well, it wasn't part of a big plan. It's sort of, in some ways, uh, I didn't fall into it. It, when you reflect on it, it makes sense, but it wasn't necessarily a big part of my plan. I started out in retail and I was in management in retail. When I was doing that, I really liked actually hiring for my stores and recruiting for my stores. And then I transitioned into admissions for a university. And from there, I was recruited into a role for a search firm, so an executive search firm. And so that was my first like proper recruiting job. I did that for 7 years and started off as a sourcer and then moved into an account executive role and worked in a couple of different industries. I supported nursing to start in healthcare and then moved into advertising. And then after 7 years, I had my son and wanted to do a bit of a change. And so left the search firm. And what I thought initially I would do would be I would start my own search firm and recruit on my own, but I had a non-compete agreement. And so I needed to wait that out. And so in the in-between time, I said, well, I'll go do some corporate recruiting. And that's how I got my first corporate job. And it's funny. So I was working for an advertising agency and I loved it. It was something like I could have never imagined myself doing. It was so exciting. The people were so interesting. The office was beautiful. And the company grew really fast. And then I got laid off and I just cried and I was so devastated because I thought I'd never find a job that good again. And I just, I was really upset because I just loved that job. And so I was like, well, but it's been a year, I'll start my own thing. And then I got recruited to Dell, which I think for me was like one of the transformational roles in my career. And my thought initially was, well, I'll go do that, this contract gig for 6 months, and then I can get Dell to be a client of mine. And in my little search firm I was starting. And then that turned into, 5 years later. And that was really my big learning around like how a large global corporation works. I had some really, really amazing managers. I got to do and learn some really interesting things. I had smart colleagues. Um, and I put myself sort of in this, let's call it in the slow lane
Yeah.
while I was at Dell because my son was young. And I wanted to be available to him. And so growing didn't, in terms of level, et cetera, didn't really work with my family at the time. And like that for me was a pretty foundational decision in, I think, what has ended up being my long-term success, in that I put these constraints on myself, but I got really focused, and I was very focused on what would work well for not only my career, but also my family. And so when I did grow and do other things, I was super intentional about it. And I think I was probably ready for it. It wasn't too soon. And so I had a level of success and I grew from there. Um, I went to then from there to Xerox to start to manage, and had another great mentor there, and someone who I respect and I value their opinion a lot to this day. And then I felt like I sort of skipped a step though in my career. And so from a title perspective, I stepped back and I went to Flex, where I worked with you, and had an amazing manager there and a team there that I really adored. And I learned a lot too. It was a new type of industry and a different footprint. And so had really great experiences there and working with you and Joanna and so many people. And then got this opportunity that I'm in now, a little over 4 years ago. It was hard to leave Flex, but it was a pure startup. And well, it was a little more established when I joined, but it was small. You go from Flex, where it's 200,000 employees, to Unity at the time was just under 2,000, and have been part of what at that point in time was like the hyper growth of the tech market. um, was part of taking this company public, and super hyper growth. We went from 2,000 to over 7,000 employees really quickly. And now, we're living through the adjustments and the changes that come from being with a public company in a different sort of market. So, it wasn't any sort of career that I planned. I really liked recruiting. And I always said I didn't want to be a business partner because I like to hire people. And my view of business partners wrongly was that, they were the ones that were letting people go. And so I always leaned into the recruiting end, and I was really comfortable there. Here at in my current company, though, because we're growing, I've had the opportunity to do things that I hadn't done before. And so now I find myself leading business partners and doing the thing that I thought that I would never want to do, but it's super interesting. And I'm learning a lot, just sort of open, and I've become more open to just sort of taking those changes and the opportunities as they arise. So, but it was never a big master plan that someday I want to do this. I think it's been leaning into what works for my family and myself, and like where I think I can add value. That's always been where I have tried to focus. Sometimes I've done it better than others. Sometimes I've, knocked it out of the park, and other times I've made great mistakes along the way, but all learnings.
Well, I think comes with the territory of having more responsibilities, especially when you're leading an important HR company, right? Not HR, technology company that has this important tech HR team as well.
Yeah.
So the scope that you have is a global scope. So how you see currently, what's your experience on working with other cultures, with different people that are in the actual field of HR and TA?
I'd say I've had different levels of experience um, with global companies, and it's been interesting. There've been times when I've worked for a global company, but my exposure to the operations was limited. And then there have been times where I've been responsible for teams, um, but they were established companies in most instances. And so there were fewer growing pains. And so it was just more about coming in and learning. here it's been really interesting for me so a couple of things. This company was not founded in the US.
Mhm.
And so it was built in Denmark. And so we've got a huge presence in Europe, and a lot of the foundation of the company was built on a different culture than an American culture. And so then obviously we've grown significantly here. But what's been really unique is that, and one of the things I like about the company is that we have a number of different offices in different locations. And while you have to drive consistency as best you can to scale, we really do try to live and understand the unique aspects of different cultures. And so one that's the motivations and the engagement of the different populations. But then from an HR perspective, it's also very interesting learning, the local laws and the differences in terms of processes and what needs to happen based upon where you're at. In Europe, you've got, if you're in 6 different countries, you have 6 different processes you have to follow. We have a large office in Montreal, which is super interesting, and they've got such a unique culture on their own. We've got teams in APAC and how they operate. This past year, we merged with an Israeli company, and that's been really interesting. And then obviously really unique challenges that no one anticipated in managing um, a team and integrating during a war, and what that looks like and how you navigate that. We had, a very large population in Tel Aviv. And so understanding their experience and what was happening has been interesting. And then too, supporting all of our employees in a really heightened time in terms of what's happening in the world and how do you navigate that, because we have such a large footprint. There's been a lot of learnings, and like, how do you embrace the cultural differences and then still bring everyone together as one and have everyone understand ultimately what the mission is. It's been unique challenges along the way. And having to do a lot of listening, learning from mistakes, understanding what works and what doesn't work, different people's motivations, what motivates someone in one place won't motivate someone in another, and just understanding how to navigate that's been really interesting.
Wow, that's quite experience on that end. So how you guys handle the pandemic on also because that was probably a different urgency for everyone that works in companies, big companies, how to handle that circumstances, not just war, like the example you just mentioned, but this one was a global situation that was happening, and it was affecting everyone in different cultures in different ways to
Yeah,
do
for
things,
sure.
right?
Yeah, no, we'd been a very office-centric culture prior to the pandemic. And so then in March we locked down, and the company is, I'd say, our overall population is a bit younger. And so, we had just operational challenges with employees not having space to work from home, and how do we support them and get what they need to be able to work from home. How are we collaborating? It's a very collaborative team. Everything from the engineers and design engineers and what they're doing, they're accustomed to getting together and working together in a room. And so how are you replicating that? um, and then supporting people through a really difficult time was all challenging and interesting. And then on the reverse side of that, we've now had, like, well, how do you bring people back? For a number of years, people established a new way of working, and want different things out of. I mean, we lived through a global pandemic, and everyone was impacted by that. And so I think everyone has a different set of expectations and or wants for their life than maybe they had before. And so I think you see that reflected in the workplace. And now too, we have like 4 distinct generations working together. And so that has changed a lot. And I think the pandemic, I think, has really brought some of those differences to light, and how we work and how that's going to change. And so it's been challenging to navigate. I think we've tried some things and then changed along the way, and I think we will continue to do so for a period of time as well, and figure out what works. And but from an HR perspective too, there's just so many complexities around that, around either if you think immigration, and then you think about just facilities and equipment and all of those things. It presented a number of different challenges that I don't know that we're on our roadmap to work through or plan for. But so basically, everybody's thoughts on what FY20 and 21 were going to be were thrown out the window. And now I think the past couple of years, everyone's trying to figure out, well, what's our new footing, and how does this look, and how do we navigate all that?
Estás en el podcast de HR Power Up. Nuestra invitada de hoy, Amber Ace. No olvides suscribirte a nuestra comunidad en nas.io HR Power Up.
What challenges do you see in recruiting currently right now? And what was your experience on 2 years ago when we had this explosion of companies, especially the ones that are related technology that start growing up so much? What was your experience, and how you see the challenges right now on recruiting?
So I'd say it's twofold. I think there's one aspect. I think younger generations have different motivators. And so you have a lot of people who are designing processes and programs and plans in HR, but the people designing them, I think, have a different view on what's important. I think that, a lot of the Gen Zers that are coming up, their motivations in terms of what they're looking for are sometimes very different than what would be, let's say, historical norms. And so the notion of, title and or salary being attractive, I don't know that that's completely it any longer. I think people are looking for flexibility. I think people are looking for mission-driven companies. They want to, in technology, I think, too, they want to be passionate about what they're doing and what they're working on and what they're creating. I think they are looking, environments is really important, either where they're working and what that experience is like, and or then to the flexibility to work in a schedule that works for them. A lot of people are talking about 4-day work weeks and what does that look like, et cetera.
Hybrid model,
And
right?
yeah, and so I think that there's there will be a challenge for HR and companies to achieve goals and learn to be flexible and like find that right balance that will be meaningful enough to attract an employee base and retain them. And so that goes then to if we go back a year and a half, 2 years, when technology was booming, there's companies were opening up their wallets and doing really outrageous things at the time to attract talent, and the war for talent was in technology in particular was pretty crazy. And what was interesting, at one point there was a statistic that there were more recruiting jobs posted on LinkedIn than there were software engineers because companies were hiring so much. And I'm not sure if that's true, but someone told it to me, so I'll run with it. But I think recruiting was in such demand, and we saw, even with recruiters, a number of really junior recruiters growing quite rapidly because the market was so competitive and companies were hiring so much. And now we're in this situation, and it's for technology in particular, it's just a complete 180. Hiring has really slowed down, and for a lot of companies, the first organization where they'll make cuts in times when hiring is slowed is in recruiting. And it's a really, really tough market for recruiters now. Now it's older, and so it's not necessarily new to me. It happened in 2008, and that's when I was laid off. And so I've lived through these cycles before, and there've certainly been slowdowns. And I know what happens. And the hope is then too that companies now are taking the time to really reflect on what they did in terms of like how they reacted to the market and the business and what their plans were. So hopefully then when it does correct, everyone's a little more thoughtful. I think you saw a lot of people get into recruiting, and now there'll be a lot of people who don't want to stay in recruiting because, it is difficult to live through something like this. And it's hard. It is right now, it's a really hard time for recruiters. That's a huge part of my network. And so when I go on to LinkedIn and see my friends and colleagues and understand how difficult it is to land in new spots, I have great empathy as a leader. This past year and a half, I've had to conduct a number of reductions in force, and my team has been greatly impacted, and it is heartbreaking. I can understand the business behind it, but it's very sad to live through and to know how that feels, and what that experience is like is it's difficult to see. And so I think the industry right now, we're in it's a tough place to be. There's a lot of change, there's a lot of uncertainty. I think we'll come through it on the other side. It'll take some time. And I hope to, that we learn from it, and that companies are really purposeful in their growth, and plan accordingly. But yeah, it's a tough time. And I think we'll be in this cycle. I see some glimmers of hope in the market for recruiting. I've started to see things open up more, and obviously the jobs numbers in the US are showing, growth and, not big increases or really steady unemployment. There is hiring that is happening, but technology right now is certainly much slower than it was. And it's probably at a reasonable rate now for hiring and growth in technology, but it's such a difference from what it was a few years ago. And all of the people who joined, I think, that's where the real challenge is.
Yeah, it is. So how you see right now, as well, technology is helping those positions or those areas like talent acquisition or HR, right now that the AI is exploding. It's already here with us. How you see those tools helping, currently now or in the future? How you see that putting in place a better support or a better way to do the work? How you see it
Yeah,
now?
there's so many great tools. And we've used a few in the past few years that have been really interesting. You've got everything from, let's say, AI tools that are administrative. So, we've got some things that we're launching that are using AI to help answer questions for employees and help them get answers faster and really drive more of a self-service culture on some of the transactional HR work that has existed before. So then, our teams are able to lean in and do more of the strategic work. In recruiting, we've had a few really cool tools that we've used in the last few years. We had a tool that we were using for the creation of inclusive job descriptions. And so we would run our job descriptions through the tool, and it read for tonality and language, and it showed if it was leaning either masculine or feminine, and or if certain words were a flag. But using AI to build super inclusive job descriptions. And we saw an increase in the number of underrepresented applicants that we had after we launched that. And that was a really great tool. There's also new tools that are coming out and that we've used that have supplemented some of, let's say, the more traditional recruiting tools and having, let's say, a broader reach. So tools that allow recruiters to source on things beyond, like LinkedIn, but using data from like GitHub and white papers and pulling from all aspects of the net to build out a broader candidate pool, while still leaning in on some of the other, traditional recruiting methods that we've used in the past. So there's been a lot with scheduling too. So a lot of the administrative work that has been a part of recruiters' lives, now you're able to automate that. And then even too in broader HR practices, you've got like RPA with ops functions and figuring out how to automate processes on the back end. That is freeing up a number of man hours and landing in, let's say, better outcomes and faster. So I think there's so many different things. It's just almost keeping up with everything that's available and then deciding what's the right thing to invest in. That's almost the harder part at this point. And figuring out where to prioritize and aligning what the tools you're using and how you're using it to the outcomes, your desired outcomes for your business.
Obviously, reducing sometimes and be more effective with cost associated to the cost and budget as well.
Yeah, bring down your cost per hire, increase the diversity of your candidate pools.
So you kind of answer one of the questions that I had, which was related to the future of HR and HR and talent acquisition, both in a way. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, this is a program that a lot of people will be seeing. So I wanted to ask you any advice that you want to bring to young people who are starting their careers or people who are already solid in their careers that are in HR, something that you want to advise for them to take in consideration for this year and what's coming in, to considering that it's going to be a election year in a lot of places in the world. So it's going to happen. It's going to be a lot of things might happen. So something that you want to give us an advice and for us to be aware in the HR state global world.
Yeah. I think some learning for me in the last 18 months is this is a really, really hard time in HR. A lot of heavy things that are happening. And I think you need to make sure that you're taking care of yourself and acknowledge what you are experiencing. And so really checking in with how you're feeling, because how you're feeling is going to likely impact how you're operating. So if you are scared about being able to deliver on something because of resource constraints or the challenges that you're facing, that fear is going to impact how you work and how you interact with people. And through a lot of mistakes on my own, in ignoring perhaps what I've been feeling in the past, I have realized that I didn't always show up in the way that I wanted because I wasn't necessarily taking the time to acknowledge what I was experiencing and really check in and see where I'm at. And so I've tried to be more purposeful in that in the last year, thinking about how am I feeling right now? How is this impacting me? What is it? How is it showing up in my work? And if I feel like it's having a detrimental impact, trying to hone in on, okay, well, what's driving that? Is it a fear of failing? Is it uh, being scared of, an outcome that I can't control? And really trying to be mindful of exactly what I'm experiencing at any given time. And then I just think from a career perspective, um, you know, title and or money, it's not going to make you happy. Try and be super purposeful in working with people who inspire you, who you are learning from. I think if people can try and do work that they feel really good about, and then they can be successful in, and they have a great network, your success will come from that more than just maybe applying for that next role because it's a level higher or it's got a different title. If you're unhappy with the people you're working with or the product you're supporting, in the end, you're not going to be as fulfilled, and so you won't be as successful. If you start with what works for you and be really clear on what that looks like and be patient, I think success will come. There's a person on my team right now. She's in Helsinki, and she's just so passionate about helping her peers and solving problems and making things better. She's never once brought up title or compensation or level, but she is continually looking. She's passionate about what she does, and she's continually looking for ways to make an impact and support her team. And she's come up with a number of brilliant ideas. And the result has been like, she's solving all of these problems for us. So her position has grown. She's gone from a recruiting coordinator now to a senior program manager driving global programs for the function. And, it's been a pretty steady rise, but it was never once about her level or her comp. It was about doing things that she was excited about and learning and making an impact. And I think she's really clear in that. And so the success has come for her. And it's such like an inspiring story. I talk about her a lot. She's pretty great.
Great. A lot that work with passion also pays
Mm-hmm.
pays dues in the future for sure.
For
So
sure.
just to wrap up just to wrap up in general.
Okay.
What books or what podcasts are you reading or hearing in that
Yeah.
matter?
So I do more audiobooks. Probably not smart enough for your podcast, Gerardo, but no, so I do a lot of audiobooks while I'm commuting or traveling. And so most recently, there's Anderson Cooper has two books that I've listened to. One was about the Astors and then about the Vanderbilts, because got really into that because of the Gilded Age on HBO. And so I became pretty obsessed with all things Gilded Age. So those were really interesting. I'm listening to Bono's book right now. I went and saw U2 at the Sphere, and so then got into Bono again, like I was 13. And then podcast, I'm not gonna lie, it's not very highbrow. I listen to, Fly on the Wall with Dana Carvey and David Spade, and then uh, Smartless, and then Morbid. I love Morbid. It's a true crime podcast. It's a lot of fun. I guess it's not fun actually. It's a pretty morbid subject, but they're entertaining. But I listen to podcasts all the time now. I find myself listening to podcasts more than watching TV. That's really replaced it, and I'll have it on if I'm not on calls, which isn't frequent, but when I'm not, I'll have it on and listen to podcasts while I'm working. So a lot
That's
of time
great.
there. True crime, a lot of true crime.
It's a part of having fun as well on outside our office or duty hours, right? So it's great.
Sure. Well,
So I want to thank you for being here with me to talk a little bit about your career, about the HR and talent acquisition, uh, and I'm hope we can collaborate more and talk more about this topic. I'm sure will do in our personal matters. But I'm so happy to have you here. Thank you for putting out a little bit of time with me, and thank you, Amber.
oh, thank you for having me. I'm so proud of you and for taking a risk and doing something fun and something new. So, and then, embracing the lucha libre too.
Thank you, thank you. So
So,
so thank you, everyone. This was your HR Power Up podcast. We'll see you soon. Thank you, Amber.
thanks.